Okay, well, that's not the full story. Let's hear the full story.
It's really the story that was important in my head.
Tell them the truth. Tell them about
what
the admissions.
What do you mean the truth?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Sassy with Mickey and Kev. You might be wondering where that acronym came from.
I am.
Scrubs and Soy Sauce, aka SAS. And then Sassy just sounds a little better. So it's Sassy with Mickey and Kev.
Okay. I have no comment.
Did you know that no comment is a comment in itself?
Who told you that?
You did. Anyways, you guys know Kevin is pretty private and secretive about his life. We don't really know very much about him. So I thought we would have Kevin take us through his life journey and kind of how he became the incredible, brilliant, talented physician that he is today.
Wow, that sounds wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many takes we've had to do this video?
This is like the fourth time we've filmed this. And I'm not going to lie, I love you, but I've listened to this story 4 times now, so I'll try not to yawn.
I feel like I'm getting interviewed by like different people and having to tell the same story over and over again. So I was born in China, and then I moved to Japan at a very, very early age.
Can I ask why you moved to Japan?
My parents were continuing their education there. I was there and I did first grade there. Then I moved to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was in Japan roughly the same time Mickey was. So we have very interesting and similar stories.
Right. So for those who don't know, I was born in Japan because that's where my parents also studied. And Kevin actually arrived in Japan a couple of days before I was born in December of '96. So we could have hung out as babies.
As babies and not in the same city.
We were pretty close.
Pretty close. First grade Japan. I think that's one of the interesting changes I had to face was moving from Japan to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that was hard was learning the language. But secondly, school and everything, the culture was very different. I don't know how much you know about Japanese education, but it's actually, I think it's quite fun and more practical than the U.S. one. So you learn like how to cook, you have responsibilities,
mm-hmm.
like cleaning the classroom, and you have like a lot of home ec classes even in first grade.
Mm-hmm.
And all your grades and everything are like public. Like you have rankings, and so like you know who's doing well and who's not doing well in the class. So
give us the tea. Like, were you doing well?
Yeah, I was like I don't know if the valedictorian is a word, but like at
like
top
you
of
were
the
ranked
class.
number 1?
Yeah, so there's like 3 classes, right? Like there's like 3 first grade classes. And I think I was ranked first in like my third of the first grade class.
Dang!
Yeah, so I'm peaking early. No, I think I was a pretty smart kid. I don't know if that's from my parents being like well educated or just genetics or just the environment, but I think that understanding that I was, pretty smart and wanted to succeed is really important,
mm-hmm.
especially when you're young.
Sure.
So I think moving to the U.S. was actually quite hard. Learning English, I think that's probably why I like forgot all my Japanese, because I spent so much of my time trying to learn English quickly so I could catch up with the rest of my peers. So Japan schools actually starts in April and U.S. school starts in September. So I had like the 6 months of time to try to learn at home with my mom how to speak this language. And fun fact, why is my name Kevin? I did not have that name when I was born. I actually named myself Kevin because when I moved to the U.S., the only movie I had watched was Home Alone.
Uh-huh.
And I thought the Home Alone guy was very cool. So thank you, Macaulay Culkin. I did not realize that every other Asian male is also named Kevin.
So you named yourself after him. Do you regret that decision now, knowing everybody's named Kevin?
I don't know. I think it's a nice name. I don't regret it. Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm glad you feel that way because you have to live with it now.
I agree. I can always change your name. You can always change your name, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's too much now. It's a lot of work.
So you moved to Seattle. This is actually your hometown, is it not?
It is. I moved here, started like second grade here. So in elementary school, I was in what was called like the highly capable program,
mm-hmm.
where you can take a test and, if you do well, then they like place you amongst, they let you like take more harder classes, or they put you in classes where like other people who are, in the like mindset. But you end up just taking a lot of classes with upperclassmen. It wasn't, the best place for me to learn. And so we decided to go to private school for high school. And from that point, what I realized is that, in school, the subjects that you learn are, regardless of whether you're going to like the best school or like community college or any school or learning from home, the topics are basically the same. Like calculus isn't changing, or like English isn't really changing, but it's kind of the people that you are surrounding yourself with. So like high school is, when I started private high school, was quite a big struggle for me because everyone was doing like their own thing and everyone was pretty successful. And I was trying to really catch up at that point.
So were you in all of the advanced classes? Just basically growing up, you were always in the advanced classes?
Yeah. And then in high school too, I tried to take all the advanced classes because that's what I was interested in. I don't think I did that well in high school per se, in grades and everything else.
Yeah, and people would be curious to hear your GPA. So what was it?
Mickey almost broke up with me when I told her, right? No, you were like, oh my God, how did you get into college at all?
I was shook. Go ahead, tell them.
My like overall GPA was like 365. I think of it like every 365 days of the year,
Oh, that's cute. That's a cute analogy. But 365, which, not that it's a bad GPA at all, but Kevin ended up going to one of the best institutions in the United States for college. So I was intrigued that you were able to get in with the 365.
I have a good personality.
Yes.
Great personality. Also, I think it's kind of schools maybe look at this or don't look at this, but
explain the 365 to me. So what did you not get A's in?
I think I got an A in every like biology, chemistry, like all the science, STEM classes. I think I may have gotten like 1 or 2 A minuses, but I got a bunch of B's I got a B in PE class, I think sophomore year, and like a B in orchestra class because I like played an instrument I actually didn't really know how to play.
Wait, I didn't know this. What did you play?
I played violin because they only had like 2 violins in the orchestra and so they needed one.
Wait, violin is not an easy instrument to pick up in high school.
I played in middle school, but it was like I never had a really private lesson teacher. So there was like solos and I sounded like a squeaky chicken. So like, yeah.
Wait, can you play canon in D for me?
Yeah. Do we have a violin? I can play violin. I can make recognizable sounds. Should we talk to Brett and Eddie and ask them to do a collab?
Yeah, on the next episode, Kevin on the violin.
Well, I would challenge 2-set violin to a duel.
Yes.
Duel? Is that a duel?
No, it's not even a duel. It would just be a lesson.
That would be a lesson. I don't really think I need lessons. I don't really want to get better.
Okay, so B's in orchestra, PE, basically things that you probably should have gotten A's in.
I agree. It's not so, yeah.
But that's why you were still able to get into incredible colleges.
Not that you should be doing that in the first place.
What do you mean?
Like, for other high schoolers out there, don't try to do well in the classes that you don't think matter.
So you ended up with a 365. You took a decent amount of APs. How was the college application process for you?
I think it's probably the first, this is I had to apply to college, apply to med school, apply to residency. So this is the first time I'm doing writing all these essays and doing all these interview stuff. And I think at this point I wasn't really aware, and 2, I wasn't really prepared to like not game the system, but understand what it meant to how to apply well, right? To share the things, my strengths, as well as try to like put myself in the same level playing field as the other people are. I think this is back in 2012 that I was applying to, 2011, 2012 when I was applying to colleges. So I think the atmosphere back then is a little bit less crazy and competitive as it is now.
How many schools did you apply to, and did you have a dream school, so to speak?
I only applied to like 12 or I think between like 12 and 15 schools. I did apply to MIT as an early admission, and they did not really want me. So that was one of my dreams crushed.
Were you rejected?
Okay. I got waitlisted when I applied early, and
was that heartbreaking for you?
I mean, I didn't think that I would get in. I mean, there's always a chance, but it wasn't like...
It was a shot in the dark?
Not that. It wasn't like throwing darts into darkness.
Did you cry when you didn't get in?
I mean, it's early. There's so many other opportunities to get into college.
So out of all the schools you applied to, how many did you get into? Or how many did you get rejected from? Whichever is easier.
Got into half the schools and rejected from the other half.
Okay.
I don't know. I think schools are really bad about writing rejections. I don't. They're all like, oh yeah, like they put you on these like wait lists, and you have no idea where you are on them. Interestingly, I think a key point that I recognize a little bit later is that I didn't really get into any of the schools I had an in-person interview at. I don't know. College interviews were mainly done by, alumni around wherever you live, so near Seattle, and they were relatively informal, I would say. Not all schools had interviews, hence the statistics I was able to find by saying that, I didn't get into any school that gave me an interview.
Do you think you just weren't a good interviewee?
I mean, yeah, I just like went and had a conversation with folks, and some of the interviews were just at Starbucks, or it wasn't like super formal. One of them was like at like a restaurant, and it's not like an interview where you like dress up and you go sit down somewhere. I don't think I made any lasting impression on any of the interviewers. So how the process works is that having been on the other side of interviewing other people, you end up just being like another reference letter for the person, even though you've only met the other person for like 30 minutes or an hour. And so I didn't really say anything exciting. I just kind of regurgitated the things that I had on my application, told them I was interested in science, and I swam, and like I didn't really provide any other like personality traits or anything special.
But that's the thing about you, right? Like even to this day, you are 100% just yourself. Like you don't ever feel the need to, not that you need to be pretending to be somebody else, but in an interview you obviously want to show off your most wonderful qualities, right?
What are my most wonderful qualities?
I think your most wonderful quality is that you're so consistent, and if someone were to get to know you, they would love you, but the first impression is so
I'm just always average.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
I'm so funny.
You're hilarious, yeah. Haha. So despite all of this, you still got into an incredible college. So tell me a little bit about like your college experience. Were you already pre-med?
Yes, so I went to a relatively small engineering school, majored in bioengineering. I was definitely thinking about going the medicine track. The reasoning behind this was that I really wanted to learn like tangible things, like building stuff, engineering, coding, because that was, what was exciting.
And it's practical.
Yes.
Yeah.
It made things, I had to take a couple extra classes, but it was very exciting to me, and I felt that those things could be applied to medicine. And I think that was the right choice for me because the pre-med community in my school was very small. There were maybe 5 to 10 pre-meds a year, rather than if I went to a larger public institution like Berkeley and majored in biology, and I'd be competing amongst thousands of pre-meds for the limited med school spots. So we were all very helpful to each other and helped each other learn. And they're probably like some of my closest friends that I have today, the people who went to medicine for my undergrad.
Can I ask if the decision to go into medicine, was that influenced by your parents at all? Was there any guidance?
I mean, of course, I would say. I don't think they ever like pushed me and like prevented me from doing other jobs.
Okay.
But I don't know. I think like if you tell any kid, like it's very hard to convince a kid who, one, is very curious, interested in science, and wants to help people. Like how freaking cool is it to do surgery and like learn the anatomy of how the body works? There's so many things about the human body that we don't know, like diseases that we have no cures to. Like it's hard to convince a curious high school, college age kid, dissuade them from going into medicine, right? And that's only the intellectual curiosity. Like the other component is that, medicine is highly coveted and respectful, and also the other portion that it's a pretty linear track. There's not much thinking involved to go into becoming a doctor in terms of like career choices. Like you just keep going on to the next step. It's not like if you go like entrepreneur or like doing business or stuff, you don't know where you're going. To answer your question, I do think that there's influence, but I think it's healthy influence, I would say. I think if I wasn't the kid that was suited for medicine, they wouldn't have pushed me to become a doctor.
That's fair. Okay, so you're in undergrad, you're pre-med, you're taking these courses. Was there a pivotal moment where you decided, oh yes, I'm definitely going into medicine, I'm applying to medical school? Yeah,
so as a pre-med, you have to do a lot of research. That's kind of how you become competitive in the process for application. So I like randomly applied to an Amgen Scholar program and got in. And I didn't realize it was like pretty hard to get into until like later.
Amgen is very prestigious.
I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody that I was doing it. So that summer I had a choice. I had a summer internship with a venture capitalist company versus doing this Amgen scholarship. So I think that was the existential crisis or decision point in which I could have gone towards more of a tech, that sort of aspect versus going into medicine. At the end of the day, I don't really have any concrete reasons for why I did what I did, but I just decided to do the research and go the pre-med route.
Wow, sounds very nonchalant.
I mean, you don't have to have...
But maybe this is like a lesson. Like, not everyone has this like heavenly story of this beautiful, incredible, crazy story about why they were drawn to
medicine, right?
Medicine.
You don't have to have that. I didn't take any gap years anywhere. The funny reason, first foremost, is that my grades were really good before senior year. So if you apply straight through, you don't have to show people your senior year grades. And I also purposefully put off some of the harder classes for senior year so that they wouldn't affect my GPA, although at the end of the day, like, it didn't really matter anyways.
So what was your GPA when you applied?
It was a 4.0 GPA.
Wow. Yeah, and what was it after those classes?
This is the first 6 semesters, weighted it. I got like 2 or 3 Bs in the first semester.
Oh, you really said senioritis.
How is that senioritis? I turned everything in on time and I went to all my classes.
Did you have a fun time those last 2 semesters? What were you up to? Why did your grades take a plummet?
I don't think they plummeted. I took more fun classes too, and they were the classes in which I got not a in. I got a B in like biostatistics for some reason. I got a B in like some Asian history, like, oh yeah, and I also took Spanish. I think I got like a C in that class, to be honest. I don't know. Everybody else in the class spoke Spanish or took Spanish in high school, and I just wanted to learn because for fun. Like, I actually took the class to learn Spanish, and I couldn't do. I like didn't understand anything that was happening.
You don't speak any Spanish at all.
I agree. And the professor just started speaking Spanish the very first class, and like no English, and I'm like,
this is Spanish 1?
Yeah, Spanish 1 in college. I was surprised they even offered this course. But anyways, I think it's important to take a language. I took Mandarin Chinese in high school, which is kind of not that great because I already spoke Mandarin at home.
Did you take the AP test for that?
I did.
What'd you get?
5.
Okay, just checking. Did you take the SAT too for that?
I did not.
Ooh.
I didn't need... What? I feel like Mickey's always judging me for all the things that she is doing. She never took the SAT. That's crazy.
Took the ACT.
What Asian kid has never taken? I think we should make.
Okay, let's talk about what'd you get on the SAT. Let's hear it.
Like this is back when it's out of 2,400, right? I got like a little bit less than 2,300.
That's pretty good.
I took it multiple times. I was very consistent. I tried to do better, but I couldn't do any better.
Yeah. What section did you not?
The writing. The writing.
Oh.
The math, I could sleep and finish it like in 5 minutes. The reading was a little bit tough, but the writing, like, I don't know, all this ABCD, like, I'm like, 3 of these could be right. You know what I'm talking about, right?
That's fair. Okay, so what were we talking about?
Oh my gosh, off on a tangent. College, why I decided not to take any gap years. I think it's powerful to take a gap year if there's something that you have planned, and it takes a lot to apply to medical school. And I feel like I was really rushed at the end of junior year and senior year, like taking the MCAT and doing all of these things. So it's perfectly fine to take the time. And to be honest, like the average age of my medical school when people started was probably like 25, 26. And the people who are kind of on the older side definitely had a better, not just a better attitude, but like a better perspective about like how to manage like going to medical school.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what was it like applying to school? How many schools did you apply to?
Oh, we're going to this one. Applying to medical school. This is a little bit different because I actually applied to an MD PhD program. So this is a little bit different than applying to just MD programs. So a little bit of context. MD PhD programs, most of these are sponsored by the US government to try to promote more physician scientists, meaning people who are doctors but also conduct research.
So the appeal of doing an MD PhD is that not only do they pay for the whole thing, but that you also get a stipend, a living stipend during the PhD portion.
So the government pays for your medical school and they give you a little bit of a salary, but it takes a lot longer. And it's like very prestigious. It's definitely harder to get into than just MD programs, focusing also on not just medicine, but also research. So you need to show not only that you want to practice medicine, but also you have goals in trying to do research and etc.
Your goal and motive for applying for the MD PhD was, one, because you really felt that passionate about research, or two, because you had been so academically accomplished your whole life that you felt like this was the hardest, baddest thing you could do, so why not? Or both?
I think probably both. I think it was exciting. Both my parents, they're both researchers and they have a medical background. They went to school for a really long time. So in some ways, you want to up your parents in terms of the number of degrees and things that you have, right?
Sure.
And this is one way to do that. Also, like I had done a bunch of research in undergrad. And I like doing research, and I hadn't really done medicine yet, like other than shadowing, and like I had more experience and interest and expertise in talking about research than anything else. I think applying MD PhD was appropriate for me. At that point, I'd still dependent on my parents. They paid for my college tuition, but I was early 20s. I really wanted a little bit more independence from my parents because like a lot of the things that you're tied to them is finance. They're very nicely paying for school. And so a lot of the stresses and things that they push on you, even though we're not in the same place, is from the ties to money. And if you do an MD PhD program, you have your little stipend. You don't have to pay for medical school. You're not going to have med school debt. Then
and maybe you would have a little less added pressure.
And you also set yourself for your life until you're like 30, which is kind of scary. Like if you start at 22, the 4 years of med school, 4 years PhD, you're going to be like 30 years old. So it does really like tie your up early adulthood, but you have something that you're striving towards.
Sure.
That interview process was actually quite stressful. And I think this is the interview process in which I learned a lot. These interviews are in person. So you fly to these different institutions. So MD, PhD programs, not all med schools have these programs. They're usually the ones that are a little bit more prestigious because they have the money to do research and they have the money to provide for your medical education. So I went on a lot of these interviews, and all these interviews, like 2-day interviews with like 10, 15 people each place. And you're talking about yourself, you're talking about why you want to do research, talking about all this stuff. I, after all these interviews, was like, this is a lot. Talking about research, there's a lot to talk about research. And I really like doing research itself, like asking the questions and doing the stuff and just like theoretically, like hypothesizing and thinking about what can be done or what we can solve. But a lot of research is jumping through hoops in terms of trying to write grants, interacting with other people, and the amount of actual research that gets done, I felt, was not as significant after having all these conversations with folks. And also, like, I wanted to be a surgeon. I want to be a doctor. That was my main purpose, right? Like, I wanted to do, like, things on Grey's Anatomy, like, I wanted to get there, and I was like, do I really want to spend an extra 4 or 5 years doing research like right now? So I don't know if it was an existential crisis then. I did spend a lot of time thinking about this, and I decided just to do MD.
Okay, well, that's not the full story. Let's hear the full story.
It's really the story that was important in my head. But, there's other factors that you can't control, such as the...
So tell them the truth. Tell them about
what
the
admissions. What do you mean the
admissions.
truth? So I applied to maybe like around 20 to 25 programs or so, MD, PhD programs. And I interviewed about 10 of those places.
Okay.
I did get into a couple of those schools. So they're kind of rolling admissions. And I did get into a school that was pretty happy with, and I like decided to enroll there for the MD, PhD program first.
Wait, you actually enrolled?
Not enrolled. I said that I would go there.
Oh, so you submitted your intent to attend.
Attend there, but
wait, which school is this? I don't even know.
This is the school.
The school?
Yeah.
Oh, what was the conversation that you had though about this school?
It's not like a top 10 school, but it's not like a bad school. And so my parents, they're happy that I got into an MD PhD program because those acceptance rates are like 2%, but given the amount of interviews I had and the places I interviewed with, my parents were like, maybe you can try again. Like,
So they were asking you to wait a year and reapply altogether?
well, it wouldn't really be waiting a year. The whole process takes like 9 months. It would just like restart literally like the next month, right?
But to give context, this is a wonderful school. If I got in here for med school, my parents would throw like a citywide party. It's a great school still.
No,
right?
it's great. I mean,
Yeah.
I was on a wait list on a few schools that were better, right? And so
Sure.
So one of the schools that I was on the wait list for, which is the school I ended up going to, I sent them a love letter. This is like, it's called a letter of intent, but I think it's always good to have some healthy like communication with the admissions committee. Like, you don't have to bother them a lot, but to show that you're interested in them and why you're interested in them on top of the application package that you sent them. So,
But you basically explain to them, if you admit me, I will come. So please let me in.
Yeah.
Pick me, choose me, love me.
yeah, and
Right?
you can't really back out of that. It's not binding per se. The medicine community is not very large, so
Right.
like
You shouldn't be sending out like 10 love letters is what
you
we're
should be
saying.
sending out one love letter.
Right.
Yes. So I did that, and somehow it actually worked, and I got
Right.
in. But this is just for MD only.
Well, and
which
this school, this is a top 10 program, very prestigious, beautiful gold stamp, right?
yeah, you still have to pay for tuition though, which is normal. But
But were you thrilled that it was an MD only versus MD PhD?
oh yeah, of course. I'm like, this is great. This is what I wanted anyways. Yeah. So I mean, I had the chance of just doing MD at the other school too. Like, so in order to get in, you have to get into like both the graduate school and the ND program. So it's kind of like a lot of hoops and coordination. Fun fact, not fun fact, but bad fact. There's a lot of like, not sketchy things, but like under the table things that probably happens in these applications.
Yeah.
People change their numbers, like their admissions rates are not as maybe as low as you think they are. So one of the other programs, which is like a pretty top program, they sent me a message, during the admissions process. Like, we will offer you an invitation, but only if you verbally let me know that you will come here. Otherwise, we will reject you. And they're like, you have like 72 hours to respond to this. And so I was like, wait, what? So they actually called me and talked to me on the phone about it. So I guess they probably didn't want to have it written on like a...
That's smart.
Yeah. And so I was like, I'm not going, I'm sorry, I'm not going there. And they sent me a rejection letter literally the day after in an email, right? So statistically, I'm like in the number of denied pool. However, like in like reality, I was like, could have gone to the school, right? So I'm not trying to put hope and numbers out there for people who are trying to apply, but there's a lot of deception that can happen in this process. But there's also a lot of promises and things that I think you have to be careful of too, because the schools also want the best, or the like most students interested in them. So I've had email conversations where, program directors are like, or people who I think are important and who have say in the system. And they're like, oh yeah, you're a shoo-in for the program. We love you. We want you. As long as you want to come here, you can come here. But that ended up not being the case and didn't actually end up getting an admissions. You have to take everything with a grain of salt that everybody's just, acting in their own interest in this process. And the final thing is that a lot of these schools are rolling. I'm not sure exactly which date, the last date. You have to like say that you're going to a medical school. I think it may be May 1st. But there's a lot of action that happens after May 1st because medical school doesn't start till like July 15th or something. And if you can think about it, if one person decides not to go to a school, someone on that wait list gets pushed in, and then wherever that person was going to, there's an empty spot there. So there's a cascading kind of effect that gets, delayed by time. So I've had a classmate who started medical school at a different medical school. So they like went to like the first couple days of school, and then they received a letter saying that they got accepted to another school. They had just gotten a lease, so they just picked everything up after going to school for a couple of days and then moved across the country and started to the school that they wanted to go to. Yeah.
Which honestly, can you really blame them? It's 4 years. It's a long time.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the kind of the nature of the process. Everybody has their own stories. It's not smooth. No one expects it to be smooth, and you have to kind of fight and try to get what you want. I think I learned a lot in this process. My parents didn't go to school, high school, college, or anything here, right? So I kind of learned all of these things for me, which is good. I think I'm in a good place now, but it's a lot for a young kid, I feel. I think it would be really awesome if we could have an episode that we focus on how we approach interviews, not just me, but also Mickey, because I think she's probably better at interviewing than I am because she's just so lovely. What was your quote? If I get it?
My philosophy is that if I can get an interview, I'm pretty confident I can get whatever it is that I applied for, but I just need the interview. Like, getting the interview for me is the hard part. And I think for Kevin, it's reverse.
I have to pass the interview. If I pass the interview, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the best at interviews, but I've been on the other side where I've interviewed people for medical school and for residency programs, and I understand what people want from that.
Understanding what people want and being able to execute it are two different things, though.
But it's better than before, I would say, for those aspiring pre-meds and medical students out there, and stay tuned for the full interview episode later. But when I was interviewing people for medical school, these are two things that we wanted to answer after having a conversation with you. And that reflects whether or not I want to have you in my medical school. Number one is, are you academically smart enough to be able to complete our rigorous education well? And point number two is, are you able to be a positive addition to our medical community? And do you fit in this community? And that can come in a variety of different ways, just depending on what your interests are. And you don't have to be, there's no like magic formula, but I would really like to see some sort of passion. We'll talk more about interviews. I think this is something that both Mickey and I are pretty passionate about, and maybe something we'll work on in the future to help people with that. Because I think as Asian Americans, I guess maybe I won't talk about everybody in general, but I'm not very good about expressing the things that I have done. I
think in comparison, we tend to belittle our accomplishments or give them at face value. And while other people who are interviewing are taking this tiny, tiny thing that they did and blowing it up and telling a beautiful story about it, which is what you're supposed to do in an interview, right? Yeah. But because we were raised in an environment where we are taught to kind of just put your head down and continue to move forward, and you don't want to celebrate too much, otherwise it almost, like, it doesn't, you would stop pushing yourself to work harder if you just celebrated everything to that extent. I think is what the idea that was put in our heads, right?
Yeah, I'm not expecting people to lie or anything or say anything, but I think there are good ways of trying to,
it's storytelling.
Which is what I'm trying to learn. This is good practice for interview, I would say. Mm-hmm. It's good for me. I apologize if my words are not understandable, but hopefully it'll get better. I think it'll be similar to dancing on TikTok or doing the rest of the social media stuff. If you want to look back at the first YouTube videos that I was in the videos for, I feel like I was pretty cringy, and I've made some improvement over the years.
Yeah, you totally have.
Really?
You're natural.
Okay. I don't think I'm a natural.
We've gotten to the point where Kevin teaches me the TikTok dances, and I'm the one messing up all the time.
So to summarize, we talked a lot about me and my journey. I will say that, on paper, I look pretty accomplished, and it looks like I didn't have any difficulties going through each of these steps. But, there were a lot of challenges that I faced, and in each step, there were things that didn't go smoothly. And I don't expect anybody's journey to be linear in that way. That's totally okay. And I think having these challenges or things that don't go 100% your way is actually good, and helps you learn how to do problem solving and how to get through each of these steps. Hopefully it gets easier, and I think that applying to undergrad, applying to med school, applying to residency, each subsequent step I was more prepared to do, and hopefully that is the case for everyone. Thank you all for listening to my story, and I hope you guys stay on and listen to the other stories and other thoughts that we will share in the rest of this podcast.
We'll see you guys next week.
See ya. Bye-bye.